The warning alarm screamed through the corridors of Kepler 7b colony at exactly 3 in the morning. Commander Yuna was already awake, sitting in her small office and staring at the sensor data on her screen. She had been watching the approaching ships for 6 hours now, hoping the readings were wrong. They were not wrong. 40 Vellani warships were coming. They would arrive in less than 2 days. Yuna stood up and walked to her window. Outside, the colony stretched across the rocky plain under a purple sky. 3,000 people lived here. Farmers, engineers, teachers, children. They had built this place over 15 years, turning dead rock into something that felt like home. And now the Vellani had decided they wanted this rock for themselves. She picked up her communication device and called her second in command. Sergeant Taiho, wake everyone. Start the evacuation protocol. Commander, Taiho's voice was rough with sleep and fear. We only have 7 ships. They cannot carry everyone. I know. Do it anyway. Women and children first. We load as many as we can. Yuna ended the call and closed her eyes. 7 old frigates against 40 warships. 200 soldiers against thousands of Vellani warriors. The math was simple and cruel. Most of them were going to die here. She put on her uniform jacket and walked out into the chaos. The colony was already awake. People ran through the streets carrying children and bags of belongings. Some were crying. Some were silent with shock. The evacuation ships were powering up at the landing field, their engines glowing blue in the darkness. Yuna found Councilman Dewan arguing with a group of colonists near the central plaza. He was a tall man with gray hair and angry eyes. He had always wanted the colony to build more weapons, more defenses. Now he was shouting that they should stand and fight. We cannot fight them, Yuna said, stepping into the argument. We can only save who we can save. Then we die like cowards. Dewan demanded. We die like people who chose to protect the weak instead of throwing them into fire. Get your family to the ship's councilman. She walked away before he could respond. The next hours were a blur of decisions and desperation. Yuna organized the loading of supplies, assigned soldiers to keep order, and tried to answer the questions of terrified civilians. How many could they save? Maybe half? Maybe less. The ships were old and could not make many trips before the Vellani arrived. Then, just as the first sun began to rise, something unexpected happened. A young soldier named Jisoo came running to find Yuna. He was covered in dust and breathing hard. Commander, a ship crashed outside the Eastern Dome. Vellani ship. Scout class. Yuna's heart beat faster. Survivors? Yes, we counted 13. 1 officer, some crew, and... Jisoo paused, his face strange. Children. They have children with them. The word hung in the air between them. Children. Yuna gathered a team of 12 soldiers and drove out to the crash site in an armored vehicle. The Vellani scout ship lay broken on the rocks, smoke rising from its shattered hull. It must have been damaged in some accident and drifted off course before falling here. The Vellani survivors had crawled out of the wreckage and huddled together near the ship. Yuna had seen Vellani before in pictures and videos, but never in person. They were tall, almost 3 meters, with silver-gray skin that shimmered like metal. They had 4 arms and large compound eyes that reflected the light like black mirrors. Their mouths had no lips, just hard ridges that moved when they spoke. The officer was badly wounded. Silver blood covered his chest and pooled on the ground beneath him. He held a weapon in one shaking hand, but he was too weak to lift it. Around him stood 4 adult crew members and 3 younglings. The younglings were small, barely up to Yuna's chest. Their skin was softer and lighter than the adults. They pressed close to one of the adults, a female who was also wounded. One of Yuna's soldiers raised his rifle. "Orders, Commander." Yuna looked at the scene before her. These creatures belonged to the species that was coming to kill her people. Their fleet would arrive tomorrow and burn everything she loved. She had every reason to hate them. But she looked at the younglings, trembling and afraid, and she saw only children. "Lower your weapons," she said. "Commander?" The soldier sounded shocked. "I said lower your weapons." "Sergeant Taiho, call Dr. Myray. Tell her we have wounded incoming." "Villani wounded. You want us to help them?" Taiho asked. "They are the enemy. They are survivors of a crash. They are hurt. Some of them are children." Yuna walked forward slowly, her hands raised to show she held no weapon. "I don't kill children, Sergeant. I don't care what species they are." She stopped a few meters from the wounded officer. Up close, she could see his compound eyes were dimming, the light inside them fading. He was dying. "Can you understand me?" she asked. The officer made a sound that her translator device turned into words. "You are human. You should kill us. Your colony will burn. There is no reason for mercy." "Maybe not," Yuna said, "but I am going to help you anyway." "Will you let me?" The officer stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he dropped his weapon. It clattered on the rocks. "I am called Tarek," he said. "I do not understand you, but I am too weak to fight." Yuna nodded and waved her team forward. "Careful with the younglings. They are scared. Move slowly. No sudden movements." The soldiers approached carefully. One youngling began to make a high keening sound, and the wounded female held it closer. A human medic named Hana knelt beside them and spoke softly, even though the translator made her words sound strange. "It's okay. We won't hurt you. We're here to help." They loaded the Villani into vehicles and drove back to the colony. People stopped and stared as the strange convoy passed through the streets. Some shouted in anger. Some threw things. Yuna ordered her soldiers to form a protective circle around the aliens. By the time they reached the medical center, a crowd had gathered. Councilman Daewon pushed to the front, his face red with fury. "What is this madness?" he shouted. "You bring the enemy into our home, while their fleet comes to murder us?" "They are wounded," Yuna said calmly. "We will treat them. They are Villani. Their people are coming to kill every man, woman, and child in this colony. And you want to waste medicine on them?" "Yes. Why?" "Give me one good reason." Yuna looked at the councilman, then at the crowd of frightened, angry colonists. She took a deep breath. "Because if we become monsters to fight monsters, then we have already lost everything that matters. Because those are children, and I will not let children die when I can save them. Because this is who we are. Humans. We help people. Even when it is hard. Even when it hurts. Even when it makes no sense." She turned and walked into the medical center without looking back. Inside, Dr. Myray was already preparing for surgery. She was a small woman with gentle hands and tired eyes. She had delivered babies and treated diseases and saved lives for 20 years. Now she was facing a challenge unlike any before. "I have never operated on a Villani," she said. "Their biology is completely different from ours." "Can you do it?" Yuna asked. Myray looked at the dying officer on the table before her. Then she looked at the younglings being carried in behind him, their strange eyes full of fear. "I can try," she said. "That is all I can promise. That is enough." Yuna left the medical center and returned to the chaos outside. The evacuation was still happening. Ships were loading. People were crying. The enemy fleet was getting closer with every passing minute. She had just made a decision that might cost her everything. She had chosen to help the enemy while her own people were in danger. But as she watched Dr. Myray work through the window of the medical center, as she saw a human woman fighting to save an alien life, Una felt something she had not felt since the warning alarms first sounded. She felt proud. Dr. Myray had not slept in 40 hours. Her eyes burned and her hands trembled slightly, but she refused to stop. The Volani officer named Torek lay on her operating table, his silver blood spreading across the white sheets despite everything she tried. His biology was strange and difficult. His organs were in different places than human organs. His blood was thicker and had a different chemistry. She had no proper tools, no guides, nothing but old databases she had pulled from the colony archives and her own desperate determination. 3 times during the surgery, Torek stopped breathing. 3 times, Marie brought him back. The other doctors and nurses worked on the rest of the Volani survivors. The wounded female crew member was easier to treat, her injuries less severe. The other adults had only minor cuts and burns. But the 3 younglings were the most difficult, not because of their wounds, but because of their fear. They would not let the humans touch them. They huddled in a corner of the medical center, making that terrible keening sound, their compound eyes darting around the room like trapped animals. Nurse Hannah sat near them for hours, speaking softly, bringing water and food, asking nothing in return. Finally, the smallest youngling took a piece of fruit from her hand. It was such a small thing, a child accepting food from a stranger. But Hannah smiled like she had just won a great victory. Outside the medical center, the colony continued its desperate evacuation. Ships launched every few hours, carrying groups of colonists toward safety. Commander Una worked without rest, organizing the chaos, making impossible decisions about who could leave and who would have to wait. The Volani fleet was now less than 20 hours away. Councilman Day-One came to see her again as she supervised the loading of the 4th evacuation ship. His anger had not cooled. "Do you know what people are saying?" he demanded. "They say you care more about those aliens than about your own people. They say you have gone mad." "People can say whatever they want," Una replied. "I have work to do. The medicine you are using on those creatures could save human lives instead. We have enough medicine. That is not the problem. The problem is we do not have enough ships." Day-One grabbed her arm and pulled her close. His eyes were wild. "Then why waste anything on them? Why help them at all? Tomorrow we will all be dead, and your mercy will mean nothing." Una pulled her arm free. "If we are going to die tomorrow, then how we act today matters more than ever. I will not become a murderer in my final hours. I will not let our children see us abandon our humanity just because we are afraid." She walked away and left him standing alone. Later that night, Dr. Mireille finally finished her surgery. She stumbled out of the operating room with silver blood staining her clothes and her face pale with exhaustion. Una was waiting for her. "He will live," Mireille said. "I think. His body is fighting to heal. I have never seen anything like it." "Thank you," Una said. "You should sleep now." But Mireille shook her head. She walked to a chair beside Tarek's bed and sat down heavily. "I want to be here when he wakes up. I want him to see a human face and know that we tried to save him." She was asleep within minutes, her head resting against the wall. Una watched her for a moment. This small, tired woman had worked for almost 2 days to save the life of an enemy. She had asked for no reward, no recognition. She had simply done what she believed was right. The evacuation continued through the night. More ships launched. More families said goodbye to friends and neighbors they might never see again. The fleet was now 15 hours away. Torek woke just before dawn. His compound eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the light of the medical center. He turned his head and saw Dr. Mireille asleep in the chair beside him. Her hands were still stained with his silver blood. For a long time, he simply stared at her. Then Yuna entered the room, and his attention shifted to her. "You survived," she said. "How do you feel?" Torek tried to sit up and failed. His body was too weak, but his voice was clear when he spoke. "Why did you do this?" "I told you already. You were hurt. We helped. That is not a reason. My people are coming to destroy your colony. Everyone you love will die. You know this. Yet you saved me. You saved our younglings. You spent resources and time and energy that you could have used to save your own people." He paused, his eyes fixed on her face. "This makes no sense. There must be something you want from us." Yuna pulled a chair close to his bed and sat down. "I want nothing from you. That is impossible. Every species wants something. Power, territory, resources, survival. You are facing extinction, and you choose to help your destroyers? There must be a reason. The reason is that I looked at your younglings and I saw children. Scared children who needed help. I looked at you and I saw a person who was dying. That was enough." Torek was silent for a moment. His forearms lay still at his sides, too weak to move. "Among my people, such behavior would be seen as weakness. Perhaps even madness. Among mine, it is called compassion. I do not know this word. It means caring about others even when it costs you something. Even when there is no benefit to yourself." Torek considered this. "Your species is strange. Maybe. But I would rather be strange than cruel." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small communication device. She placed it on the table beside his bed. "I am going to give you a choice," she said. "This device can contact your fleet. You can speak to whoever is in command. You can tell them about the crash, about your survival, about what we have done for you." Torek's eyes widened slightly. "You are giving me a weapon. I am giving you a voice. What you say is up to you." She stood up and walked to the door. Then she stopped and looked back at him. "Our evacuation is going slowly. Many of my people will still be here when your fleet arrives. If there is anything you can do to help them, I am asking you to try. Not because I saved your life. Not because you owe me anything. Just because it is the right thing to do." She left the room. Torek lay alone in the quiet medical center, the communication device within reach of his fingers. Across the room, Dr. Murray slept peacefully, her chest rising and falling with each breath. In the corner, he could hear the soft sounds of the younglings being fed by human nurses. He thought about his sister Veth, the admiral of the approaching fleet. She was cold and logical and ruthless. She would not understand what had happened here. She would see it as weakness or as some kind of trick. But the humans had asked for nothing. They had simply helped. Torek reached for the communication device. The call took a long time to connect. When it did, Admiral Veth's face appeared on the small screen. She looked exactly as he remembered, her silver skin darker than his, her compound eyes sharp and intelligent. "Torek," she said, "we received your distress signal but could not locate you. What happened?" "My ship crashed on the human colony. I was badly wounded. I almost died. How did you survive?" Torek looked at the sleeping doctor nearby. He looked at the room full of healing Villani, tended by human hands. "The humans saved me," he said. "They saved all of us, even our younglings." There was a long silence. Veth's expression was impossible to read. "That makes no sense," she said finally. "We are coming to destroy them." "I know. I told them that. They saved us anyway." Another silence, longer than before. Why would they do such a thing? Torek thought about Yuna's answer, about the word she had used, compassion. "I do not know," he said honestly. "But I am looking at the proof of it right now. A human woman spent 2 days operating on me to save my life. She is sleeping beside my bed as we speak. Her hands are stained with my blood. Veth said nothing. Sister, Tarek continued, these humans are not what we expected. They are strange and illogical, and they do things that make no sense. But they are not evil. They did not have to help us. They chose to. What are you asking me to do? I am not asking anything. I am just telling you what happened. What you do with that information is your choice. He ended the call and set the device down. Outside the window, the first sun was rising over the colony. In a few hours, the fleet would be close enough to begin the attack. Most of the humans would still be on the surface. Torek closed his eyes and waited. He had done what he could. Now the fate of 3,000 humans rested on the decision of his cold, logical, ruthless sister. And for the first time in his life, Torek found himself hoping that she would choose to be something other than what she had always been. The Vellani fleet stopped. Commander Yuna was standing at the control center when the sensor operator shouted the news. 40 warships, just 6 hours from attack range, had suddenly cut their engines and held position in the darkness of space. What are they doing? Sergeant Taiho asked, his voice tense. I don't know, Yuna replied. She stared at the screen showing the motionless fleet. Her heart was beating so fast she could hear it in her ears. For 3 hours, nothing happened. The colony held its breath. Evacuation ships continued to launch, but slower now, as people watched the sky and waited for fire to fall. Then a single Vellani shuttle broke away from the fleet and began descending toward the colony. One ship, Yuna said. Just one. A scout? An assassin? Taiho reached for his weapon. No. Yuna shook her head slowly. If they wanted to kill us, they would use their entire fleet. This is something else. She gathered an escort of 6 soldiers and went to meet the shuttle at the landing field. The whole colony seemed to be watching from windows and doorways as the alien ship touched down on the rocky ground. The shuttle door opened and a single figure stepped out. Admiral Veth was taller than her brother Tark. Her silver skin was darker, almost gray, and her forearms moved with a grace that spoke of power and control. She wore the uniform of a Vellani fleet commander, decorated with symbols that Yuna did not understand. She carried no weapons. Yuna's soldiers raised their rifles, but she waved them down. Hold your fire. She came alone and unarmed. We will hear what she has to say. Veth walked across the landing field until she stood 3 meters from Yuna. Her compound eyes reflected the light of both suns, making them look like pools of black oil. You are the commander of this colony, Veth said. It was not a question. I am Commander Yuna. You must be Admiral Veth. Torek told me about you. My brother tells me you saved his life, that you treated his wounds and fed our younglings while your own people were dying. Not dying yet, Yuna said. But yes, we helped them. Veth tilted her head in a gesture that might have meant curiosity. Why? Your brother asked me the same question. I will give you the same answer. They were hurt. They were scared. We helped because that is what we do. Even knowing we were coming to destroy you. Especially knowing that. What kind of people would we be if we only showed kindness when it was safe? When it cost us nothing? Veth was silent for a long moment. The wind blew across the landing field, carrying dust and the distant sound of crying children being loaded onto evacuation ships. You have created a problem for me, Commander Yuna, Veth said finally. My orders are clear. This colony is to be destroyed. Your species is considered a pest, an obstacle to Vellani expansion. I have the power to kill every human here within the hour. I know, but there is an older law among my people. A law older than our empire, older than our conquests. It is called the debt of life. When one person saves another, When they risk their own survival to preserve a stranger, a bond is created. That bond cannot be broken by orders or politics or war. Yuna felt something shift in her chest. Hope, perhaps, or fear. She could not tell which. "You saved my brother," Veth continued. "You saved 3 younglings of our species. By the ancient codes, I owe you a life debt, and a life debt cannot be paid with death." "What are you saying?" Veth looked up at the sky, where her fleet hung invisible in the darkness above. "I am saying that I cannot destroy this colony. The debt forbids it. But I also cannot disobey my orders. If I let you live, I will be executed for treason. Then what do we do? I will give you time. 5 days. That is how long I can delay my fleet before questions are asked. You will evacuate your people during those 5 days. When the time is over, I will destroy the colony. But it will be empty. You will be gone." Yuna stared at the Admiral. "You would risk your life for us? You would face execution to give us time to escape? The debt must be paid. Honor demands it." Veth paused. "And there is something else. Something I do not fully understand." "What?" "My brother spoke to me of a word. Compassion. He tried to explain what it meant. He failed. But I think I am beginning to understand it now." She looked directly at Yuna. "You showed mercy to my people when you had every reason to hate us. You gave kindness when cruelty would have been easier. That is not logical. It is not efficient. But it is." She stopped, searching for words. "It is something new. Something I have not seen before." The 2 commanders stood facing each other. Human and Vellani. Enemy and enemy. Yet somehow, in that moment, something else as well. "I accept your offer," Yuna said. 5 days. We will be gone by then. Good. Veth turned as if to leave, then stopped. "There is one more thing." "Yes?" "My soldiers will help with your evacuation." Yuna thought she had misheard. "What?" "The debt is not just mine. It belongs to all who would have burned this colony. If we can help you escape faster, the debt is better paid." Veth looked back at her. "My brother has already volunteered. Others will follow. We will work together to load your ships, repair your engines, prepare your supplies. We will do whatever is necessary to save as many humans as possible. Your soldiers will help us? After they came here to kill us?" "Yes." Yuna did not know what to say. She had prepared herself for death. She had prepared herself for desperate escape. She had not prepared herself for this. "Admiral Veth," she said slowly, "do you understand what you are offering? Your people and mine, working together. If word of this spreads, it could change everything. Not just for this colony. For both our species. I understand." Veth turned fully to face her. "Commander Yuna, I have conquered 17 worlds. I have destroyed cities and burned civilizations. I have followed orders without question, because that is what soldiers do. But I have never seen anything like what you did for my brother and those younglings. I have never seen an enemy choose mercy when hatred was easier." She took a step closer. "You have shown me something I did not know existed. A different way of being. A different way of thinking. I do not fully understand it, but I know that it deserves to survive. You deserve to survive. And I will do whatever I can to make that happen." Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes. She blinked them away. "Thank you," she said. It seemed like such a small thing to say, but it was all she had. "Do not thank me yet. 5 days is not long. Your people will have to work hard. My people will help, but the task is enormous." Veth looked at the colony spreading out before them, the domes and buildings and streets full of frightened humans. "Can you do it? Can you save them all?" Yuna thought about the broken ships, the limited supplies, the thousands of people who still needed to be evacuated. She thought about the fear and the chaos and the impossible odds. Then she thought about what had happened in the medical center. A human doctor saving an alien life. A human nurse feeding alien children. A simple choice to help instead of hate. "We will find a way," she said. "We always do." Veth nodded slowly. Then she did something that Yuna did not expect. She extended one of her forehands, palm up, in what looked like a greeting. "Among my people, this gesture is only made between trusted allies. Those who have proven their honor beyond question." She waited. "I offer it to you now, Commander Yuna of the human colony. Will you accept?" Yuna reached out and placed her small human hand on the alien palm. Veth's skin was cool and smooth, like polished metal. "I accept," Yuna said. For the first time in the conversation, something changed in Veth's compound eyes. Something that might have been warmth. "Then let us begin," the Admiral said. "We have much work to do." And so the impossible began. Vellani shuttles descended from the fleet, carrying soldiers who had come to destroy. But instead of weapons, they carried tools. Instead of fire, they brought helping hands. The humans watched in amazement as their enemies became their saviors. And somewhere in the medical center, Tarek heard the news and smiled for the first time since his ship had crashed. The debt was being paid. The story was just beginning. The first Vellani soldier to land at the colony was named Keth. He was young for his kind, barely past his third molting, with silver skin that still had the soft shine of youth. When his shuttle touched down, he did not know what to expect. He had been trained to destroy, to conquer, to kill without mercy. Now his admiral was telling him to help. He stepped onto the rocky ground of the human colony and looked around. Humans stared back at him, some with fear, some with hatred, a few with something that looked like hope. A human technician approached him carefully. She was small, even by human standards, with dark hair tied back from her face and oil stains on her hands. She looked at him for a long moment, then said something that his translator turned into words. "I'm Jisu. I work on the engines." "Are you really here to help?" Keth did not know how to answer. 20 hours ago, he had been preparing to bomb this colony from space. Now he was standing on its surface, looking at a creature he had been taught to consider less than an animal. "Yes," he said finally. "I am here to help." Jisu studied him for another moment. Then she nodded and turned toward the landing field. "Good. Follow me. We have a ship with a broken fuel line, and I can't fix it alone." Keth followed her. All across the colony, similar scenes were playing out. Vellani soldiers working beside human engineers. Vellani medics helping Dr. Myray treat wounded colonists. Vellani warriors carrying supplies and loading crates and doing whatever tasks the humans needed done. It was strange. It was uncomfortable. It went against everything both species had been taught to believe. But it was working. Commander Yuna walked through the streets, watching the impossible unfold around her. A group of human children had gathered near a Vellani soldier who's repairing a water pump. They stared at him with wide eyes, fascinated and terrified at the same time. The soldier noticed them watching and stopped his work. "Hello," he said through his translator. "I am called Tarn." The children did not respond. They just kept staring. Tarn looked at Yuna, uncertain. She smiled and walked over. "Kids, this is Tarn. He came from very far away to help us fix our water. Can you say hello?" A little girl, no more than 5 years old, stepped forward. She looked up at the massive alien towering above her. "Are you going to hurt us?" she asked. Tarn lowered himself down until his compound eyes were at her level. "No, I am here to help. I promise." The little girl considered this. Then she reached out and touched his silver arm. She giggled at the smooth, cool texture. Your skin feels funny, she said. Your skin feels warm, Tarn replied. The girl laughed again and ran back to her friends. They clustered together, whispering excitedly about the alien who had talked to them. Yuna watched Tarn return to his work. His four hands moved quickly and skillfully, repairing the pump in half the time it would have taken a human engineer. Thank you, she said. Tarn looked at her with his strange, mirror-like eyes. Why do you thank me? We came to kill you. Now we work because honor demands it. There is nothing to thank. There is always something to thank. You could have followed your orders. You could have burned this colony and felt nothing. But you chose to help instead. That choice matters. Tarn was quiet for a moment. Among my people, humans are considered primitive, weak, emotional. We were taught that you have nothing to offer the galaxy. And now? Now, I am not sure what to think. You are strange creatures. You do things that make no sense. But there is something... He paused, searching for words. There is something about you that is not weak. I watched a human woman work for 2 days to save my commander. I saw your people share their food with our younglings when they barely had enough for themselves. This is not the behavior of primitives. He finished the repair and stood up. I think perhaps we were wrong about you, he said. I think perhaps you are something we do not understand. Something we should have tried to understand before we decided to destroy. He walked away to find his next task. The evacuation continued. Ships launched every few hours, carrying groups of colonists to safety. With the Villani helping, the pace had increased dramatically. Systems that would have taken days to repair were fixed in hours. Supplies that would have been left behind were loaded onto ships. People who had given up hope found themselves boarding evacuation shuttles. On the third day, Tarek was finally able to walk. He moved slowly, supported by Dr. Myray, through the corridors of the medical center. He wanted to see the colony, to see what was happening outside. They stepped out into the evening light. The second sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Around them, humans and Villani worked side by side, voices mixing in a strange chorus of 2 languages. It is beautiful, Torek said quietly. Myray looked at him. The sunset? No, this. He gestured at the scene before them. Our peoples, working together. I never thought I would see such a thing. I never thought it was possible. Neither did I. Myray helped him sit on a bench overlooking the landing field. A week ago, if you had told me that Villani soldiers would be helping us escape, I would have thought you were crazy. A week ago, if you had told me that a human would save my life, I would have had the same thought. They sat in silence for a while, watching the activity around them. Can I ask you something? Myray said. Yes. When you contacted your sister, you didn't have to tell her what we did. You could have stayed quiet. You could have let the attack happen and escaped during the chaos. Why did you speak up for us? Torek thought about the question for a long time. When I woke up in your medical center, I saw you sleeping in a chair beside my bed. Your hands were stained with my blood. You had worked for 2 days to save my life. You asked for nothing. You expected nothing. He turned to look at her. No one has ever done anything like that for me. Not my own people. Not anyone. I was just doing my job. No, you were doing much more than that. You were showing me that the universe is not what I thought it was. You were showing me that there is kindness in places where I never expected to find it. He paused. How could I stay silent after that? How could I let them destroy people who had shown me such a thing? Myray did not respond. She just reached out and took his hand in hers. Human fingers wrapped around alien skin. They stayed that way until the sun finished setting. On the final night, Commander Yuna gathered everyone in the central plaza. Humans and Villani stood together, facing each other one last time before the evacuation was complete. "Tomorrow, the last ships will launch," Una said. "Thanks to all of you, every person in this colony will escape. Every child will live. Every family will remain whole." She looked at Admiral Veth, standing tall and silver among her soldiers. "What happened here will not be forgotten. We came together as enemies, and we leave as something else. I don't know what to call it. Friends, perhaps. Or allies. Or simply beings who discovered that we are more alike than we ever imagined." Veth stepped forward. "My people will return to our fleet. We will report that the colony was empty when we arrived. The official record will say that humans are cowards who ran at the first sign of danger." She paused. "But the true record will live in our memories. The story of what happened here will be passed down. It will spread. It will change things. How do you know? Because I have already seen it begin. Look at my soldiers. Look at the way they look at your people now. Something has shifted inside them. A question has been planted. And questions, once planted, do not die easily." Una nodded slowly. Then she reached out her hand, just as Veth had done days before. "Until we meet again, Admiral." Veth placed her hand on Una's palm. "Until we meet again, Commander. May your journey be safe. May your honor remain bright." The Vellani soldiers began boarding their shuttles. Humans waved goodbye, some with tears in their eyes. A few Vellani waved back, an awkward gesture learned from watching the humans. Keth found Jisoo standing near the landing field. They had worked together for 3 days, repairing engines and fuel lines and a dozen other systems. They had barely spoken beyond technical instructions. But somehow, a connection had formed. "I have to go," Keth said. Jisoo nodded. "I know. I do not know what will happen now. Perhaps nothing will change. Perhaps this was just a strange moment in a long history of hatred. Or perhaps it was the beginning of something new." Keth considered this. "I hope you are right, human Jisoo. Me too, Vellani Keth." He boarded his shuttle and flew back to the fleet. The last human ships launched the next morning. Commander Una stood at the window of her evacuation shuttle and watched the colony grow smaller beneath her. Soon, Vellani weapons would destroy everything she had built. The domes, the streets, the gardens, the homes. All of it would burn. But the people would survive. And the story would live on. As her shuttle entered hyperspace, Una made a silent promise to herself. She would make sure that what happened on Kepler 7b was never forgotten. She would tell the story to everyone who would listen. She would plant the seeds of a different future, one where humans and Vellani could stand together instead of apart. It might take years. It might take generations. But she believed it was possible, because she had seen it with her own eyes. She had seen enemies become friends. And she knew that if it could happen once, it could happen again. 50 years had passed since the evacuation of Kepler 7b. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The story of the colony had spread like fire through dry grass, jumping from planet to planet, from species to species. It had been told in whispers at first, then in loud voices, then in official records and history books. The humans who showed mercy. The Vellani who honored a debt. The moment when everything could have ended in blood, but ended in hope instead. On the planet New Kepler, where the colony survivors had built their new home, a festival was being held. They called it Mercy Day, and they celebrated it every year on the anniversary of the evacuation. Children ran through the streets wearing silver paint on their arms, pretending to be Vellani. Adults shared stories about the old colony, about the 5 days of fear and wonder, about the enemies who became friends. Commander Una was 94 years old now. Her hair was white and her body was weak, but her mind was still sharp. She sat in a chair of honor at the center of the festival, watching the celebrations with quiet joy. Dr. Myray had died 10 years ago, surrounded by family and friends. Sergeant Taiho had passed 5 years after that, his service to the colony recognized with the highest honors. One by one, the survivors of Kepler 7b were fading away, taking their memories with them into the darkness. But the story remained. Yuna looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, beyond the atmosphere and the stars, the Volani hegemony was undergoing its own transformation. The story of Kepler 7b had shaken their society to its roots. Questions had been asked that had never been asked before. Why did they conquer? Why did they destroy? Was there another way? Admiral Veth had not been executed for her actions. Instead, she had been exiled to human space, where she served as the first Volani ambassador to the Human Federation. She had worked for 30 years to build bridges between their peoples, negotiating treaties and trade agreements and cultural exchanges. She had died peacefully in her sleep just 2 years ago, honored by both species. Torek had lived even longer. He had become an elder statesman among his people, a voice for change and understanding. He spoke often about the human doctor who had saved his life, about the choice that Commander Yuna had made in the darkness of that desperate night. A young woman approached Yuna's chair and knelt beside her. "Grandmother, are you comfortable? Do you need anything?" Yuna smiled and patted her hand. "I am fine, Myray." She had named her granddaughter after the doctor who had given everything to save their enemies. It seemed only right. "The Volani delegation has arrived," young Myray said. "They are waiting to see you. Help me up." The young woman helped Yuna to her feet, and together they walked slowly toward the meeting hall. Crowds parted before them, voices falling silent out of respect. Everyone knew who she was. Everyone knew what she had done. Inside the meeting hall, a group of Volani stood waiting. They wore ceremonial robes decorated with symbols of peace and friendship. At their head stood an old Volani, his silver skin darkened with age, his compound eyes dim but still bright with intelligence. Tark. He had traveled across the galaxy to be here, to see Yuna one more time before the end. "Commander," he said, his translator voice warm with emotion. "Elder Torek." Yuna smiled up at him. Even after 50 years, she still had to look up to meet his eyes. "You look old. You look older." They both laughed, a sound that bridged 2 species and 50 years of history. "I brought you something," Torek said. He reached into his robes and withdrew a small object. It was a silver feather, shimmering with the light of a distant star. "This is from our homeworld. It is the highest honor my people can give. It is only given to those who have shown true courage, true honor, true." He paused, searching for the word. "Compassion?" Yuna suggested. "Yes, compassion." He placed the feather in her hands. "This is for you, Commander Yuna, for what you did all those years ago, for the choice you made when you had every reason to choose differently." Yuna held the feather carefully. It was lighter than she expected, soft and delicate despite its metallic appearance. "I was just doing what felt right," she said. "That is exactly what made it special. You did not calculate the risks or the benefits. You did not think about politics or strategy. You simply saw creatures in need and you helped them. That is the rarest thing in the universe, Commander. That is the thing that changed everything." Yuna looked around the meeting hall. Humans and Volani stood together, talking and laughing and sharing food. Outside, the festival continued, celebrating a moment of mercy that had happened half a century ago. "Do you remember what I told you back then?" she asked. "About hope? I remember everything you told me. I have thought about your words every day since. I said that if we treated you the way you planned to treat us, we would become what you expected. But we chose differently. And because we did, you chose differently too. Yes, I was right, wasn't I?" Torek nodded slowly. You were right. One choice led to another. One act of kindness sparked 1,000 more. The Valani hegemony is not the same empire it was 50 years ago. We still have problems, still have those who cling to the old ways. But we are changing. We are learning. And humans? Humans are doing what humans have always done. You are spreading across the stars, building and creating and dreaming. But you are also teaching. Every species that meets you learns the story of Kepler 7b. They learn that mercy is possible even in the darkest moments. They learn that enemies can become friends. Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes. She let them fall. I am glad, she said. That is all I ever wanted. Not victory. Not revenge. Just the hope that things could be better. She sat down heavily in a chair, suddenly exhausted. Her body was failing. She knew. She did not have much time left. Torek knelt beside her, just as the little human girl had knelt beside him 50 years ago when he lay dying in the medical center. Thank you, he said. For everything? Thank you for listening. For changing. For proving that it was all worth it. They sat together in silence as the festival continued around them. That night, surrounded by family and friends, Commander Yuna died peacefully in her sleep. She was 94 years old. She had lived to see her wildest hopes become reality. The news spread across the galaxy within hours. Ships lowered their flags. Lights dimmed on 100 worlds. The Valani hegemony declared a day of mourning for the human who had taught them what compassion meant. Torek stood at her funeral, the last living survivor of the original Kepler 7b evacuation. Delegations from 47 species had come to pay their respects. They filled the streets of New Kepler, billions of beings united in grief and gratitude. He placed a silver feather on her grave himself, his four hands trembling with age and emotion. The inscription on her memorial had been chosen by the colonists she had saved. It read, "She showed us who we could be, both her people and ours." In the years that followed, the story continued to spread. It was taught in schools and universities across the galaxy. It was told to children at bedtime, a fairy tale that happened to be true. It was cited in treaties and agreements, a reminder of what was possible when beings chose hope over hate. The Valani had a saying now, taught to every youngling from their first day of awareness. When the humans came to the stars, they brought something more dangerous than weapons. They brought the idea that enemies could become friends, and they proved it with kindness when kindness cost them everything. 1,000 years later, when historians wrote about the great turning points in galactic history, they always mentioned Kepler 7b, the moment when everything could have gone wrong, but went right instead. The moment when a single human commander looked at her enemies and saw people worth saving. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy with warships or weapons. They had conquered it with a story. And the story never died. Because mercy, once shown, lives forever in the hearts of those who receive it. It spreads from person to person, from world to world, from generation to generation. It becomes a legend. It becomes a tradition. It becomes the foundation of a better future. Commander Yuna had understood this truth on that dark night when the Valani fleet hung in the sky above her colony. She had shown mercy when mercy seemed impossible. And in doing so, she had changed the universe forever. This is the story of Kepler 7b. This is the story of humanity at its best. This is a story that will never end.